Welcome to How to Play Magic the Gathering. The premise of the game is that you, as a planeswalker, will use creatures and spells to defeat other planeswalkers for fame and glory. Each player begins with 20 life and a deck of at least 60 cards. You defeat one or more opponents by taking their life total from 20 to 0 using those creatures and spells. You lose the game when you have 0 life points or cannot draw from your deck. A few terms get out of the way. Your deck is called a library. Your discard pile is called the graveyard, and the area where cards go in front of you is called the battlefield. To begin the game, you draw 7 cards from your deck that only you get to see, and your opponents do the same. To understand what happens next, let's look at the phases of a turn. You have untap, then upkeep, you draw a card, the main phase, the combat phase, your second main phase, and then that's all. You may play cards during main phases and attack during the combat phase. We'll go more in depth later. Now let's take a look at a magic card. There are 2 types of magic cards, lands and everything else. We'll cover lands first, as you need them in order to cast spells and do things in the game. This is a basic forest. You'll see its name in the top left of the card, its card type in the center of the card, and a large mana symbol in the box below that. Forest is a basic land that produces green mana, one of the 5 colors of magic. The other 4 are white, blue, black, and red. Mana is the currency required in order to cast spells in the game. You may play 1 land per turn, which we'll do now since we're going first, and pass the turn to our opponent. Our opponent draws a card, plays a plains, and says go. We then draw a card from our deck, play another forest, and decide to play a spell. To do this, we need mana. You can think of mana as currency. In order for our forest to produce mana, you tap it, that is, you turn it sideways, indicating you are using the land to add 1 green mana to your mana pool. You now have 2 forests, and you tap them both for mana, adding 2 green mana to your mana pool. So with this mana, we will cast a creature. Let's take a look at a creature in our hand called Runeclawbear. You'll see in the top left is the card title, and in the top right is the card's mana cost. We'll get to this in a second. Moving on, you'll see the card type is Creature-Bear. The first half telling you what kind of card it is, a generic descriptor, while the subtype is Bear, which describes what kind of creature the card is. In the bottom right, you'll see 2 numbers split up by a slash. The number on the left is Power. It is how much damage your creature will deal in combat. The second number is Toughness, which determines how much damage Runeclawbear can take before it is destroyed and put in the graveyard from the battlefield. Note that damage dealt to creatures wears off at the end of each turn. The italicized words in the text box are called flavor text. They have no impact on the game at all. They are merely there to immerse you in the fantasy world from which this creature originates. Now back to that mana cost. A green and 1 colorless means you need 1 green mana and 1 colorless mana. This means mana of any color or of no color at all. Remember when I said there were 4 other colors in Magic? They have their own basic land types, and any of this mana can be used to pay for that colorless cost. This means that a spell costing 2 green and 4 colorless needs 2 forests and 4 more mana of any land type, forest or no. 2 forests and 4 swamps will work just as well as 2 forests and 1 of each type of the other lands in the game. So with 2 forests untapped and 2 green mana in our mana pool, we have enough mana to play Runeclawbear. We do this by simply putting Runeclawbear on the battlefield. Now our mana is spent and our forest cannot be used again until our next turn. Since we've played our land for the turn and used all of our mana to play our creature, we must pass. Our creature cannot attack our opponents or engage in combat because it has summoning sickness. While it can block other players' creatures attacking us, it cannot attack or use abilities until we control it from the beginning of our turn. Our opponent then plays another plains and plays Silvercoat Lion. This card is very similar to our Runeclawbear in that it is a 2/2 for 2 mana, only in a different color and a different creature type. They pass the turn to us, as their creature also has summoning sickness and cannot attack yet. On our next turn, we will then untap our forests and draw a card. We then get to the fun part, combat. Now in combat, creatures attack other players to remove their life points. We will begin by tapping our Runeclawbears and announce that it is attacking our opponent. If there is more than 1 opponent, we will tell it which one it is attacking. Note, you cannot attack creatures, only players. Our opponent, who has a Silvercoat Lion, decides whether or not to block our Runeclawbear. They are not obligated to block the bear either way. But remember, summoning sickness only prevents attacking or using abilities, not blocking. Now normally these 2 creatures would kill each other in the combat damage step. But after you declare blockers, each player has a chance to do something. This chance is called priority. Our opponent declares they are blocking the Runeclawbear. We now have a chance, that is, the priority, to do something. After our opponent blocks, we have a trick, an instant card called Giant Growth. Let's look at Giant Growth for a second. This is an instant card, as noted in the type line. This card can be played at any time during anyone's turn in which you have priority. After you play it, you apply its effects and put it in the discard pile. So we tap our forest to add a green mana to our mana pool and play Giant Growth targeting Runeclaw Bear. This makes Runeclaw Bear a 5 power and 5 toughness creature until the end of the turn, easily large enough to kill your opponent's Silvercoat Lion. With a dead Silvercoat Lion, we pass and our opponent plays nothing and passes their turn again. On our turn, we then draw a card and attack our opponent with the Runeclaw Bear. With no blockers, they must take the damage, going from 20 to 18 life. So now you've learned some basic terms: how to win the game, the phases of a turn, playing lands and casting spells, attacking and blocking. Join us next time when we will cover 2 more card types: artifacts and enchantments. Until then, head on over to StarCityGames.com for all your Magic the Gathering needs.